Okay, everybody. So I'm George. Maeve, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Maeve from the customer success team at ZenHub.
And I am George from the customer success team at ZenHub. And today we are going to be talking about estimates. Specifically, the title of today's webinar is All Estimates Are Wrong. So we're going to dig in deep on what we've learned from our teams, from our customers, and from some very smart people who have been at this for a very long time, and try and uncover the least wrong ways of estimating work. In order to do that, first, we kind of have to go through some of the things that we've previously covered, just as a refresher. So previously on Focus Teams, we were all working in offices, and then things happened and we're now all working out of our home. So that changed a lot of things for us. In trying to figure out how to streamline communication and ensure that people were able to focus, we defined teams in a prior episode as a small group of people that you work with on a day-to-day basis. So 4 to 5 people, all right? And again, depending on the culture in your organization, they could be called a team, a pod, a squad, a scrum team, a cell, and teams are typically joined by other teams. So most organizations, like us at ZenHub, we have a team of teams, all right? So someone needs to drive, right? Someone needs to be in the driver's seat. And so depending on, again, culture, depending on the framework that you use, that might be a scrum master, that could be a squad leader, a pod leader, a team lead, right? Someone needs to drive the things that happen on a day-to-day basis. So we also defined kind of a minimum viable process in a previous episode, and one that's designed to allow people to have big blocks of time so that they can focus, right? Focus blocks. So what do you need? You got to make a plan for the day. So most teams have a daily stand-up after they come in, have a little coffee, look at their Slack, mail, calendar, whatever. And then pod members or squad members, cell members, team members, scrum team members, they can put their heads down, go to work, get some stuff done. Leaders have some additional things that happen in that they get together and align the pods so that if my pod is blocked by your pod, we can call those out. And then leadership teams can typically have a stand-up where they are there to try and figure out where the pods, squads, teams are blocked and how to help them, okay? And then at some point you have lunch, and then you can put your head back down and go to work. And at the end of the day, we found that a great pattern to do is to refine some of the work that you're going to do next, right? So you bookend your days. You start your day with the daily plan, the stand-up, the daily scrum, whatever you call it, and you wind your day down with a little bit of backlog refinement. And that's the first week of a sprint. We defined sprints as 2 weeks last time. Some teams, 1 week, awesome. Longer than 2 weeks, you can do it, but 1 or 2 weeks are kind of the optimal timeframes. We talked about that in a previous episode. And then finally, last day of the sprint, you have some things to wind down the sprint. So you have an end of sprint review, a demo, a place where you can show what you've accomplished for that sprint, and also get feedback on what you've done. And then you follow that up with each pod, squad, scrum team, whatever you call them, going off, holding a retrospective, and trying to figure out what went well, what didn't go well, and how to improve for the next sprint. And then you come up with an experiment, which you then put into your plan for the next 2 weeks, and you do your plan for your next 2 weeks. That could be called sprint planning, iteration planning, depending on what you what you do. At ZenHub, we all have lunch together, and as we learned on the remote working one, we're now trying out a Hangout-based whole team lunch, and we'll continue to let you know how that's going. And then on the last day of the sprint, at the end of the day, you can prioritize some of that non-sprint work that maybe you have been putting off, catching up on webinars, reading a new research paper, all kinds of things. So we've organized the events, and then we've gotten used to doing them remotely over Hangouts or Zoom or WebEx or Skype or whatever you use. But we like doing things with video so you can see our faces. All right, so those are the recaps. Today's episode, all estimates are wrong. Okay, so if you've ever seen one of these, all right, this is a Gantt chart. This was actually created by somebody whose last name was Gantt. And Gantt charts aren't inherently evil, even though most of us have never seen one that's accurate. But they've been used to plan some pretty big things. Hoover Dam was planned using a Gantt chart. Now, the real problem comes down to how these things are estimated, okay? Increments of days, oh my goodness, that's just terrible. Burn down charts came into being with the rise of Scrum, right? And what we found was that instead of hours or days, hey, points typically less wrong, but they still can be wrong. And so there was some research done about all these different kinds of estimation techniques. A research team at Microsoft wrote a paper that turned out to be IEEE Paper of the Year, I think in 2011. And they found that all estimates are wrong. Now, how do we deal with that, right? Because it turns out when you're running a business, you need to be able to make a forecast, a projection, right? And so they looked at different estimation techniques that were used in teams across Microsoft. And Microsoft has some pretty big teams, and they've had some long-lasting projects, so they had a lot of data to work with. So they found that estimates done using time by individuals not doing the work was the most wrong. Okay, so if I think that it's going to take you or your team 5 hours to do something, that's typically the most wrong. And they attached some percentages to this. So if I remember right, it was like up to 400% wrong, which is crazy wrong. They found that estimates using effort were less wrong, a couple 100%. Estimates done by the team doing the work in effort, even less wrong. And then they found that there was a kind of a sweet spot in that estimates done by comparing new work against old work done by the same group of people was the least wrong. It was typically only up to about 100% wrong, so about 50% wrong in either direction, right? But that was across all the different kinds of estimation techniques, that was the least wrong. So in order to do this, here's what you do. You have to let the team do some work, all right? So if you've never done estimates before, right? Let the team do some work, spend a sprint, do some work, and then have the team come together, okay? You'll have in front of you a bunch of stuff that's been done, all right? And so what you want to ask the team to do is to figure out what the kind of, not the easiest thing they did, right? Not the smallest effort thing, and not the largest effort thing, not the big thing, but figure out the thing that was like right in the middle, right? That they just did, all right? And so we're going to call that a medium. And so what you do then from now on is you take that reference medium and you compare all new work against that reference medium. So new work comes along, right? And you look at it and you go, is this more or less effort than the work that we've already done? Okay, so that's going to be more. So that's a large. Some other work comes along, and you look at that and you compare it to the medium. You say, is that more or less effort? So that's a small. And over time, right, you'll have a bunch of work. Behind the scenes, most tools, ZenHub included, use numbers for these. Over time, you'll have a collection of work from extra, extra small to extra large, right? And now that's for work that you're going to complete within a sprint. Because again, you had the team go off and do some work over a sprint and then pick the work that was done in that sprint, which was kind of the medium effort work. And so what about things that span sprints, longer term goals, right? In ZenHub, we use the term epic for a collection of stories, a story being a body of work that you can get done within a sprint. And then that epic is completed over a number of sprints. So what about those? So there's got to be some crossover. So one of the things you can do is you can look at the t-shirt sizes, right? Extra, extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, extra, extra large. You've got points assigned to those, right? And then you have another round of t-shirt sizes for your epics, right? And just think child size shirts versus adult size shirts, right? And there's some crossover. So an extra, extra large child size shirt is actually, roughly maps to an adult size shirt of a different size, right? So this is the kind of crossover that some of the teams that we work with have used. It works pretty well. And so what that means is that, for a story, for a body of work you're going to complete during a sprint, 5 points, that's your medium. For a medium effort epic, that maps to about 55 points. Now, here's the thing. How do you figure out, without burning a whole bunch of time, what these estimates are, right? So you remember in our kind of idealized minimum viable process calendar that we showed earlier and in previous episodes, at the end of the day, we had that backlog refinement at 4:30. So here's what you do. Someone needs to bring a description of the new work, right? So this could be, if you're a GitHub and ZenHub user, it's an issue and a task list, or a user story and acceptance criteria. And so one of the great things, this is just one of my favorite ways to do this, is you spin up a Slack poll, right? And you say, all right, so for issue number 42, which we've all read, right? How much effort is this compared to our reference medium, right? And then you have people vote. And again, it's compared to our reference medium, right? So we've got that medium that was brought up, right, out of the first sprint that the team did some work. And you compare the new work to that old work, right, to that work that's been done. And here you go, people will vote. And my favorite way to deal with differences comes from J.J. Sutherland from Scrum Incorporated, the company created by the people who actually created Scrum, right? So learning from the masters there. What JJ does is he says, if you're within 3 t-shirt sizes, you just take the average and move on. Because again, all estimates are wrong, right? So we're just gonna do a quick pass at this because we need to use these numbers, these sizes, to help us try and forecast things so that we can make some rough guesses, some rough predictions around the work that we can complete for the coming sprint, right? So that we can plan for our business, right? So what do you do if the next one, if you're within 3 sizes again, you take the average and you move on. Now, what happens if you are not within 3 sizes? So again, taking from JJ here, you ask the outliers to state their case, right? So you voted extra, extra small on this. Why did you do so? And they might say, well, I've done this, 50 times. I do this every couple of sprints. It's a no-brainer. All right. If this other person voted extra, extra large, why did you vote extra, extra large? And they might reply with, well, they're the only people, whoever just coughed, just wanted to let you know you're not muted. Anyway, so they might say, well, the person who has an extra, extra small vote, they're the only one on the pod, on the squad that's ever done this before. And so you then say, all right, everybody, well, given what we've just learned, you can switch your vote if you'd like. You give them like 30 seconds to do so. And then when you're done, you take the average and you move on because again, all estimates are wrong. And so what we found is that if you, over time, consistently use this approach, right, your understanding of what you can realistically get done within a sprint will start to be refined, right? So this is a velocity chart from ZenHub. This shows the average velocity over a number of sprints, velocity being the number of points that you can get done, right, across multiple sprints. So it's an average. So if you plan your future sprints to your velocity, then the ability to predict about how much stuff you're going to get done just increases more and more. And you actually end up with burn down charts that actually, like, this is real. This is from a team that uses this approach. And you can see that the burn down chart, if you know how to read one, if you are below the line, you are ahead of pace. If you're at that dashed line, you are on pace. And if you're above the line, you're falling behind. Now, this isn't perfect, right? But it's pretty darn close to the line throughout the sprint. It's not too bad, right? And so if you use this technique, you'll start to see burn downs that actually look like this, and you'll be able to better plan your sprints. And if you plan your future sprints using your past velocity, the average over a number of sprints, your ability to state with confidence what's coming next sprint, what might be coming the sprint after that, increases dramatically. And again, just so you know, we don't hate that visualization from the Gantt charts there. In fact, our roadmaps look a little bit like Gantt charts, don't they? But here's the thing, right? For us, those progress bars in ZenHub, in the ZenHub roadmaps, they come directly from the completion of work within the boards, right? So what that means is that you can very quickly and easily spot how a project is doing. So I've collapsed this down. I'm just going to look at 3. And if that progress bar is behind today's date, that green date line, then that project is running behind. If your progress bar is like right at the date line, then you're keeping pace, you're on pace. And if that progress bar is to the right, then you are ahead. And because these progress bars are live, these actually work a lot like burn down charts. And so what you can do is you can do very quickly, you could drag that out, the one that's showing behind, and get an estimation of when that actually might be done if the team continues on the same pace with the same scope. You can then use this to make a decision about what to do, right? Do we need to add additional time to this project, or do we need to look at the scope and say, you know what, out of these 20 things we wanted to accomplish, let's pick the top 15 and do those, and then see if we can get this done by the date. We know, because Brooks's law is real, that adding people to a late project just makes it later. So you don't want to do that. Like, adding people to a late project will just make it later. Don't even bother. It's been proven time and time and time again. The only two things that you can adjust when a project is behind is scope and time. So that we're going to go over, and I'm going to ask Maeve. Maeve, I see some things. Do we have some questions in the chat that we can talk about?
Yeah, we do. So the first question that came in recently was, is there a ZenHub method to label a ticket as the medium effort so that we can keep a paper trail?
Oh, that's a great idea. So I've seen teams do a couple of things. Labels are one thing that we see a lot. So a team will label an issue as a reference medium. I've also seen high priority issues be used. The one thing, though, is that you want the stuff to close, right? So you could, put a copy of it with a direct link and pin that in one of your columns. You could put it on a wiki. You could do whatever you want. I mean, this is a thing for you and your small team, right? Because you can't compare estimates across teams, because we're people, not robots, right? And everyone has different skills. Everyone has different things going on in their lives. And so the reason that we do this averaging, the reason that we keep these estimates to within the small teams, is because that's going to be the least wrong way to estimate the work. So hopefully that answered the question. Like I said, I've seen a number of different patterns around how to keep track of this stuff. But again, once you get into the groove, and once you get a couple of sprints in, everyone will know that medium reference epic, just off the top of their head. And then you won't even need to reference it anymore. The key thing is that it needs to be work done by the team. And you should only use one reference. I've seen teams that have used multiple, like they've had, all right, this is our example, extra, extra small. This is our example, extra small. This is our example, small. And it doesn't yield more accurate plans. It actually drags out and makes the amount of time you spend estimating longer. And again, because all estimates are wrong, we don't want to burn a lot of time generating these estimates. And then another question that came in was, well, what about epics? Do we estimate epics? So I've seen teams do this. Here's the thing. The bigger you go, the vaguer it is, the more wrong it's going to be. And the more removed you are from the people doing the work, the more wrong it is. The most successful team I've seen doing this was a team that we worked with in one of our customers. They actually have a what they call a product leadership team. This is a big company that has that make lots of different products, and their product teams are broken down into multiple squads. They use the Spotify terms. So representatives from those squads come together to estimate epics. So it's actually people involved in doing the work. And they come together, product owner brings the epic. Now, it spells out the desired outcome. It spells out the acceptance criteria, but it doesn't spell out how the work is going to be done, right? Because that's something that you need to have the people who are doing the work figure it out, right? As a leadership team, you want to give them the mission that we need to cross the river, but you don't want to prescribe how to do it, right? You want, again, borrowing from Spotify, the loosely coupled, tightly aligned kind of a model. So anyway, so they do this on a regular basis. Their estimates are higher than that 50% wrong in either way in terms of being wrong. Their estimates are typically 100 or so % wrong on those epics. But what it allows them to do is to create a budget, if you will, a forecast for on a quarterly basis. Now, those estimates are all wrong. But what they do is they stack those longer term goals in a column. And the things that are at the top of that column are more likely to get done. The further down you go in that column, the less likely they are, because your columns, they should be, a prioritized list. So hopefully that answered that one as well. Experiment with this stuff. Maeve, do we have a final question? We're about out of time on this one.
No, that was everything. There's
okay.
a question which Rashenda answered, just what was the name of the law about adding people, and that was
Brooks's Law. Yeah, and that comes from believe it or not, a book written in 1972, I believe, by a guy named Fred Brooks, I think, who worked at IBM, and there's a lot of data in there. It's called, the book is called The Mythical Man Month, Man Month being a incredibly outdated term, but it proved that any of those estimates done in person months, person days, person weeks, totally wrong. And it also proved that adding people to a late project makes it later. And I've actually worked with teams that have proved this in real life just in the last couple of years. It's incredibly true. So with that, I'll put another offer out. If anyone, all of this stuff is covered in our forthcoming ebook, which is called Focus Teams. If you want to get an early access copy of it, it's going through, it's in the editing process right now, and then on to final design, and then it'll be released very soon. But if you want to get an early access to it, email focused@zenhub.com. We'll send you out a copy. And don't forget to sign up for next week's weekly webinar. So next week we have Maeve running a webinar called Tips and Tricks to Increase Productivity in ZenHub. So that's on Thursday next week. We're not going to do a Wednesday webinar next week. We're going to do a product specific one on Thursday. So we'll go in deep on how to really get the most out of ZenHub. It's going to be a good one. And with that, I'll put that email address back up. And once again, Maeve, we don't have anything else, right? We're good?
That's everything. Yeah, we're all good.
All right, very good. All right, hey everybody, thanks for joining today. The replay will be up on our website, hopefully later today, tomorrow. Zoom is running a little bit behind these days, but they're doing the best they can. And once again, thank you for coming. Thank you for your questions, and share the URL for the replays on this. If you just go to zenhub.com and then go to our webinar page, which is under resources, share it and let everybody know. So once again, thank you so much for attending. And with this, we'll say bye for now. We'll see you again next week.
Thanks, everyone.